Hi, I'm Michael Caju.
And I'm Adee Caju, and you're listening to the WAG podcast. This podcast is about health, wellness, and personal development.
Each episode is a short conversation between Adee and I on a single topic with actionable steps. We cover everything from food, mindset, fitness, and relationships.
We started WAG because of the way health and fitness changed our lives, so we hope to share a tool or two that helps you along your way.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Today we're talking about some specific journaling practices that we have. One of them is called morning pages, which is a really popular method of self-expression. And we're going to talk about a number of different journal prompts that we've used. This has been a really big and consistent practice for us, at least before we had kids. That's helped us have more inner peace, gain more self-awareness, and it's just been overall like a really big part of our lives for the last several years.
There's something really satisfying about pen to paper and, I don't know, the physical act of writing your thoughts down. There's something really satisfying about it.
And the reason that we're sharing this is I think that having a more specific intention for your journaling practice can help you be more consistent, and it can just help you get more out of your sessions.
Yeah, I've heard from a lot of people that they have a hard time starting to journal because they don't know what to write. And they need questions or they need prompts or whatever it is. And morning pages and what we're going to talk about today is something you can do without any of that. You can just do it. And there's benefits to just writing, and we're going to talk about that.
And this can help you avoid it just getting boring and stale or just being ineffective. Especially if you don't feel like you're getting anything out of it, you're not going to continue. So hopefully hearing some of the different things that we've tried, it helps you get more out of your journaling practice. In general, journaling helps us externalize our thoughts. By seeing our thoughts on paper, it allows us to get a little bit of distance from them, sort of like the same benefit you get from meditation. Like not being ruled by your thoughts allows you to choose them. It allows you to see them a little bit more clearly. It just helps with general self-awareness.
And seeing your thoughts on paper, it's just a different experience. Seeing what you're thinking in front of you and being able to read it back, or even if you don't read it back, it's getting it out of you. And I think when I'm thinking about something, it's often not 100% clear. It's kind of fuzzy. It doesn't have very specific words. I can go back and forth from multiple sentences to describe the same thing. But when I have to pick a way to describe it and write it down on paper, it creates a different experience and allows me to experience what's going on in my head a different way, which can help me process it. And one example, because that's kind of, I guess, abstract. And one example is when I started doing morning pages, which have we described exactly what morning pages is?
Nope, go for it.
No. So morning pages being just filling 3 to 5 pages with anything. So when I started doing it, and when I say with anything, meaning like whatever's on your mind, just start writing. And for me, it was never even really coherent in terms of from topic to topic. I would be on one topic and I would switch to the next topic in a point where it didn't necessarily make sense. It was whatever was in my head was just going out in the page. And my goal was just to fill 3 to 5 pages. And when I did this, I usually would start with something like, I'm not sure what to even write right now. I'm going to keep writing. And then it would end up turning into something else if I just committed to it. And when I first started, I would fill the pages, and I realized over the first 10 days, maybe let's say, the same person, a friend of mine who I was having some tension with, kept popping up in those morning pages. For some reason, they just kept popping up. And I would be writing about, I slept really well last night, and I woke up thinking about my friend, and it would just pop up randomly. And I realized from that it gave me some distance between thinking about the friend and maybe not even being conscious of how often I was thinking about the tension with them, to now I see on paper how many times they're coming up in my thoughts. And that the little space in between allowed me to realize that I want to do something about this, and I want to have a conversation with them, or I need to clear whatever it is because it's taking up space.
It can also help us spot patterns. And you're kind of alluding to that. Like if you notice that you are writing about the same thing over and over, or, maybe it's even a year apart, you can notice a pattern that is either helping you or not helping you, and you can stop it. So for instance, I read back through a bunch of journals probably 3 years ago now. And I noticed that on three separate occasions over the course of like 8 years, I had written about feeling depressed. And right after I was kind of getting over the depression, I saw in my journal that I wrote to myself, Michael, you have to keep meditating, because every time you stop, you get depressed. And basically since then, I have never stopped. And it was seeing that pattern of stopping and getting depressed that really helped me stay consistent. Like that was the motivation I needed.
That's really cool. I think that's so cool.
It can also allow us to become more of our own teacher, or like our own therapist. It allows us to see our thoughts as if we were expressing them to a therapist, and then kind of coach ourselves. So many times I've written in my journal about kind of feeling like a victim in my relationship with Adee and kind of making her wrong. My thought, and it was obvious that my thinking was that she was wrong, I was right in this situation, and I was just getting these feelings out. And by putting it down on paper, very quickly I was able to notice my bullshit. Like I was just not seeing my part in it, and like getting to see the thoughts on paper and like having an objective viewpoint, like a different perspective on them, allowed me to not be so attached to them and quickly get a little bit more ownership and accountability in the situation.
Yeah, there's something about the experience of a thought being in your head and a thought being on paper, where in your head, it's almost like there are no boundaries, and it can grow and it can expand and it can connect to your feelings in your body, or it can just change in so many different ways. It's so much more flexible. Whereas when it comes out on paper, there's more confinement as to what words you're going to choose, how you're going to describe it, how much space it's actually going to take up. And that just can all of a sudden, I've written some things on paper and been like, I don't even think I believe what I just wrote. That was in my head. I wrote it down on paper and I'm like, I feel like I don't even believe it. And if it would have just stayed in my head, it could have continued to grow and fester and change and evolve and turn into something that actually created problems in my life.
I think it's making the subconscious conscious. Like even though it's in our head and we're kind of thinking it, we're not fully conscious of all of the thoughts around, whatever the issue is.
Yeah, totally.
So morning pages, again, is a free flow stream of consciousness for 5 or 10 minutes. And then you can use prompts that allow you to specifically dive into an area of your life. So here are a number of questions.
Well, before we go into prompts, if I had one recommendation, because for me, and I know I'm definitely not alone in this, one of the huge barriers to even doing morning pages was just like not knowing what to write. And the prompts are really going to help, which Michael's about to go through. And I needed to remind myself that nobody needs to read this. Nobody's going to read this. This can just totally be go in the garbage afterwards. And it doesn't matter what your writing looks like. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if it makes sense, what you wrote down. And it's worth just committing to trying to see if the exercise has benefit for you.
I feel bad sometimes because Marcus Aurelius's journal was published and it's one of the best books in history, and it's just like his private journal. If one of my journals was published, I would seem like an insane person.
Do you think?
Oh, absolutely. So here are a number of different prompts, and I want to say that there are probably hundreds of thousands or millions of these for free online. You can just type in journal prompts. These are a number that either Adee and or I have used over the years. So some that are about the past are, what is incomplete in my life?
Like relationships or conflicts or anything like that.
Where do I have amends to make? Like, where have I wronged someone? Where do I have accountability to take? Where do I have amends to make? Some about the present are, where am I out of integrity in my life? So where am I, making a promise or a commitment to someone, maybe including myself, and breaking that promise? What is taking up my mental space? What am I currently afraid of? What conversations am I sweeping under the rug and or avoiding having? What am I excited about? Future. How do I want to do X in the future? For instance, how can I be the best husband or wife possible? And one of my favorites I got from a guy named Dan Sullivan, a great business coach, is, if I could wave a magic wand, where would I like to be personally and professionally in 2 years? So those are a number that we've done that have allowed us to gain insight and greater self-awareness. Again, there are so many free ones online, so I highly encourage you guys to try those out. Mm-hmm. How do you think they can go about creating a consistent journaling practice?
So first and foremost, creating any type of practice that you want to do consistently would be helpful to create some type of ritual around it. So I like to maybe have a specific time of day, and when I was journaling my most consistently, it was part of a series of things I did in the morning. So I would wake up in the morning, I would brush my teeth, I would go into the meditation room, I would do like a very specific room in the house, and there would be a series of things that I would do, and it didn't even necessarily need to take that long, but it would be first thing in the morning, and it made it the easiest for me to be consistent with it. Whether it was I would stretch and do a Ramwad, journal for a little bit, and meditate. That was like just the first 30 minutes to an hour of my day. Maybe you do this weekly. Maybe it's like Sunday mornings. That's what you do. And maybe daily is not an option. But finding something, maybe it's the last thing you do before you go to sleep. That sometimes is really helpful for people to just get certain things off of their mind so it can help you actually sleep better. That sometimes is really helpful for me. I'm like really stressed about something or worried about something and it keeps me up. If I just put it out on paper, there's this relief of, okay, it's written somewhere. I can't forget it. That can be really helpful as well. And the more clarity you can have around exactly where and when you're going to do this, like very specific, what journal am I going to use? What pen am I going to use? What time? What am I going to do before and after? It's the more likely that you're going to be consistent. I think one of our first podcasts ever was on how to create amazing habits. Mm-hmm. That would be
number 2.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Another thing that can be super helpful is just have ready a bunch of different options. So you know what morning pages are. I also recommend printing out or writing down a number of different prompts that you can try, because where you don't, the place you don't want to get in is sitting down to write, maybe you're feeling bored of writing morning pages and you want a prompt, but you don't have one. If that barrier shows up enough times, and it may only take once, it could kill you, like turning this into a habit.
Yeah, there's a company called the School of Life. I think it's called the School of Life, right? They have a bunch of... School
of Life is incredible.
Yeah, they have a bunch of like question prompt cards or journaling prompts specifically. They're physical, not that big, but it's really cool. And they're really kind of interesting, deep and insightful questions that you wouldn't necessarily come up with yourself. I've used those a lot where I just wasn't into doing morning pages. And I'm like, I'm just going to pull a card and pick one of those.
And then lastly, I really encourage you to pick up a journal when you're either going through a really challenging or hard time, or you're going through a time of like a lot of opportunity and maybe you're just feeling a little bit overwhelmed and like at your edge. writing has allowed both of us to get through a lot of our most challenging times, I think a lot more gracefully.
Yeah, I love it.
Try it out.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Stay in touch by signing up for our newsletter at workingagainstgravity.com or on Instagram at workingagainstgravity.
And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review, and refer a friend. We'll be back next week with another episode. Talk to you then.